Aloha! I'm Suzette Nasser. Welcome to TG Talks. The subject of our talk today is the buyer's options for title insurance. The title insurance policy is a contract between the buyer, who will be the insured owner, and the underwriter. The policy offers protection if the insured suffers a loss under the terms of the policy. Let's imagine Kina and Brian have an accepted contract to purchase a home in Kailua. They will want title insurance. What options do Kina and Brian have in terms of protection under their policy? There are a variety of options depending upon how much protection they need. So in our example, Kina and Brian have 3 choices of owner's policies as a buyer. The first option to consider is the standard owner's policy. This is the policy that is mentioned in the Hawaii Association of Realtors purchase contract. This policy protects the buyer from 4 basic coverages. Someone else claims to own your property, a defect in or lien or encumbrance on title, marketability of your title, and legal access. According to the terms of the contract, the seller would pay 60% of the cost and the buyer would pay 40% for the standard owner's policy. The second type of policy is a premier policy. This policy will cover the same 4 items covered in the standard policy, plus provide many other types of coverages, such as building permit violations, restrictive covenant violations, violation of building setbacks, and mechanics lien coverage. One significant benefit of the premier policy is that the policy's value automatically increases by 10% a year for 5 years. The cost of this policy is only 10% more than the standard premium. For example, Kina and Brian bought a home at $300,000 and 5 years goes by. Their policy coverage would increase by 10% a year. At the end of the 5 years, the policy coverage would be $450,000. That would be a benefit because if their home were to grow in equity, then the policy would grow with it. The premier policy is only for improved residential properties, not commercial. The insured must be an individual or their own trust. It is not for LLCs, corporations, or partnerships. The third type of policy Kina and Brian can choose from is the ALTA owner's policy. ALTA stands for American Land Title Association. It is a uniform type of policy given throughout the United States. This policy will cover the same 4 items in the standard owner's policy, plus provide many other types of coverages, such as mechanics liens, boundary issues, unrecorded easements, and parties in possession. The ALTA owner's policy is going to cost more, and it's usually a buyer's cost unless negotiated otherwise. This cost is 50% more than the standard premium. Also, the underwriter may require an ALTA survey, which is extensive and thus expensive. Typically, if it's a commercial transaction, the buyers may want to consider an ALTA owner's policy. So let's see how well you understand the various policies available to a buyer. Zach and Malia purchase their home and decide to select a standard owner's policy. 3 years later, they get a knock on their door and the person says they own the property. They claim that the deed that was signed 15 years ago was forged. Are Zach and Malia covered under their insurance policy? Yes, they are. Because Zach and Malia purchased the standard owner's policy, they are protected from fraud and forgery. Brian recently purchased a property and selected the standard owner's policy. Can he assume that his coverage will increase over the years? No, he can't. If Brian wanted his coverage to increase in value, he should have selected the Premier policy. This would have allowed his coverage to increase by 10% each year for 5 years. Depending upon where your property is located, you can get coverage to protect you to the maximum for each of these situations. At Title Guarantee, we have experts that can help walk you through these decisions. To sum it up, title insurance protects against claims affecting the title to property, which is probably a consumer's most valuable asset. Title Guarantee has 3 available policy options for buyers to choose from. Remember, buying a home is one of the single largest investments that a buyer can make. It is a complex financial transaction full of important details that should be carefully considered and clearly understood. One of those details is the selection of the title insurance policy. We hope this has helped you gain a better understanding of Title Guarantee's policy options. Remember, our TG officers are always available to answer any of your questions. Thank you for joining us on this TG Talks. Aloha.